computer. Okay.
Okay, good.
Oh, something happened here. Whoops.
Uh-oh.
Is that me?
What happened?
So-
Seventh, Planning Commission. First order of business is Martha is going to read the preamble and then we'll get going. And welcome, Drew. We have a full house. This is first. I love it. So thank you.
All right. In compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting laws and section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conduct its meetings in a manner modeled after Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Recusals from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that online participants use the raise your hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise your hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be heard to, recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise your hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Okay. Our meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Proper channels for comments are listed below. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the Wednesday 12 o'clock p.m. deadline are collected by city planning staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting. Proper channels for public comment: sending an email to the city planning at clevelandohio.gov address with a comment or a letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2210, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall, 601 Lakeside, Suite 501, Cleveland, Ohio, 44114. The meeting rules and procedures. The chair will call each agenda item, and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through the presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation has been concluded, the chair will ask planning staff to summarize design review advisory committee recommendations if applicable and any public comments received. Public comments received through the proper channels by the deadline are distributed to commission members prior to the meeting through Dropbox. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda items which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff if applicable. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission members except the chair may make a motion at any point after the agenda item has been called.
Okay, let's call the roll.
Anthony? Present. Fluker?
Present.
Curry?
Present.
McCray Scott? Present. Sergeant?
Present.
Blythe?
Have a quorum. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the 17th, I believe the January 17th meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments or motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the meeting minutes from January 17th. meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Anthony?
Yes.
Fluker?
Yes.
Curry?
Yes.
McCray Scott?
Yes.
Sergeant?
Yes.
Blythe?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, first order of business is a zoning matter. It's a conditional use in the pedestrian retail overlay district. For zoning matters, they are public hearings, so we will hear from a presentation from staff. We'll also then hear from the sponsor. That could be the council person or the owner of the property being rezoned. And then we'll take public comment. First, we'll hear from proponents. And then we'll hear from opponents. At any time, if anyone has a question, you can ask it in either of those sections. Before you give your public comment, please state your name clearly and your address and organization, or simply just your address if you're a nearby affected property owner. You must keep your comments to 3 minutes or less for this matter. So the first zoning matter is at 9200 Madison Avenue. And this is pedestrian overlay. And so I think, oh, there you are. Xavier, you're here to, I keep, this new technology has thrown me for a loop. So thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Xavier Bay. I'm a zoning planner with City Planning. Today I'm presenting to you the conditional use permit that's necessary for this childcare, daycare to, establish use at this previously, I think it was previously a Dollar General at this location on Madison Avenue. And so, just as I mentioned, this vacant store space is proposed to alter use. The applicants actually going to improve the site as well as make interior and exterior alterations. And so this is a suburban style daycare. This site is located at the end of the PRO mid block, so there's not really any opportunity to access the site off of any other side streets other than Madison Avenue from the PRO. Let's go into it here. Much needed daycare use in this neighborhood. And so one of the conditional uses that are needed is specifically towards the use of this property. Daycares are clumped in with the category of institutional use. And so whenever there's proposed institutional use, non-retail office space or anything of that nature, conditional use is needed. And basically the criteria you're determining off of this condition is if the denial of this application would prolong a vacancy of this site. If the subject space was designed specifically for the proposed use, and if there's not any other suitable locations available nearby. So there you just saw a shot of the vacant site, and so here this shows you the site plan proposed. So a lot of these conditions are kind of that's down to the applicant just based on the existing conditions of the site. And so one of them here is the off-street parking within 40 feet of the right-of-way, and the driveways going across the sidewalk in a pedestrian retail overlay. And so the criteria you're looking at to approve these conditional uses are, if there's not a better alternative site, better alternative location for these ingress and egress opportunities onto the site. As I mentioned, it's this mid-block, so the only access here is right off of Madison Avenue across the PRO. And the proposed parking is actually pushed back further than the lot was originally striped. They're pushing the first line of parking spaces there 33 feet off of the right of way. And the applicant's actually, proposing to improve landscaping just along the sidewalk there, fronting Madison Avenue. And so that's about it. It's just quick and sweet here. Here at the bottom here, you can see some elevations that are proposed. They're going to increase glazing right there on a Madison facing facade. Bottom right, you see the site plan. I believe Gary Fisher, the architect, is online. Again, just wrapping this up, the three conditions that you're requested to approve today is off-street parking within 40 feet of the right-of-way. They're proposing 33 feet away from the right-of-way. The two driveways across the public sidewalk, and the institutional use as a daycare. Thank you.
Is there someone here, the architect or others? So is that Gary online? Oh, I see Gary. All right, Gary, please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Xavier really kind of stole all my thunder. So we are going to add some additional trees within the parking lot, just some tree islands to help increase the greenery along the front. There are already 3 street trees there, and these will actually go in between. The aprons are already existing. The parking and all the paving is existing. The paving will be improved and cleaned up, and the striping obviously redone. They did look throughout the neighborhood for another location. This one just really, the building and the location was, just a great spot for them and offered probably the most opportunity. There is actually a second space in the building for tenancy that would be to the right of the front facade. And there is no tenant yet for that. So we would, be back to you when that tenant was going to move in. But really, it's a good building. Offers them the opportunity that they need. The traffic for the daycare is really at pick up and drop off points. The rest of the time, there'll be a few employees that are in the classrooms. So I'm happy to answer any other questions. Oh, I can't hear anyone.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of this zoning change or has a question? Online? Is anyone here opposed to this zoning change or has concerns? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Commission members, any questions, comments, discussion?
Madam Chair, to the staff, is there any specific parking requirements with regards to the zoning? Just looking at the site plan, with the 2 aprons, the parking layout seems a little bit awkward. It appears that there's 2 bays of parking that are not kind of facing one another, so I'm not really sure how that circulation works. But also based on the applicant's comments that majority of the use is going to be drop off as opposed to a lot of people parking there. It almost seems like it's over parked, and potentially the parking lot layout could be better configured to make that drop off much easier, much safer, as opposed to having all that parking there. So just comment.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to echo Andrew's comments. I think it's just too much circulation too. I think that what could potentially happen, not trying to increase their budget, but maybe there could be more green space up front to kind of, since you can't meet the 40-foot setback, then maybe you create a green buffer there, sort of a waiting environment or something like that, that could help actually improve one's experience when you're dropping off and picking up. Maybe it's like a little standby area with parallels sort of pull up and without having to pull into a parking space. Just a thought.
Yeah, this is Xavier Bay. Thank you. I can answer the parking requirement question partially. I didn't do a complete zoning review, for their needed parking, but based off of the location, I believe this site is within the TOD zone, which would remove the parking minimum requirement. If that wasn't the case, they'd be, I'd have to analyze the square footage of the proposed venue, and also consider how many staff are going to be there at the busiest time of day to give you a definite number. But typically, I believe the PRO also adds a 33% requirement for the parking. So the total parking that would be needed, they'd only need to meet 33% of that. So there are, some relief points as far as the need for parking on this site. I can defer to the applicant as to, the other questions you had of, circulation, things of that nature.
May I speak?
You may.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we did consider that, and if you look at the way that the parking is set up, there'll be at any given time maybe up to a dozen staff, probably less at the very beginning and end of the day. The thought process here is they would actually create a stacking lane so that they weren't stacking on Madison Avenue, and the idea was to bring them into the apron on the left-hand side of the property, circulate them around to the right-hand side, and then their pickup is at the lower left-hand corner of the building, so that at the beginning and end of the day, when there's drop-off happening, they would be, stacking within the parking lot area. And the right-hand entrance would not be available for, pickup and drop off. It would only be the left-hand entrance that would be used during that time period. And they would police that themselves.
Madam Chair, to Xavier, just because when I zoom in, I can't quite read it. So where the handicap spaces are right there to the left, is that where the entrance is?
That's the pickup. Yeah, that's the pickup and drop off door. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. And then separate from my fellow commissioners' questions, I guess building off of, but kind of separate, it did seem like the outdoor play area was a little small. So I think I was also curious about the parking and if there was any prospect of expanding that, and or just add some green space around that for the children that would be, partaking in services at the daycare.
Okay.
Through the chair, the outdoor play area is dictated by the daycare code, so that's the size that they required for that.
Gotcha. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And
we were allowing for. Oh, I'm sorry. We were allowing for obviously fire department access and circulation around the building as well.
Thank you.
Well, we're not going to beat this horse. I mean, as a parent who used to go to the daycare, I couldn't see some issues there, but that is in May. We're here to approve a conditional use permit. And I'm going to move to approve it with the following conditions. That we acknowledge the fact that the off-street parking is less than what's required by code of 40 feet per section 34323. Access across the drive or public sidewalk because of the PRO, and an institutional non-residential office use, which essentially is a daycare. Thank you.
And I second. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Prescott,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slide.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next two items are postponed. So
Thank
on
you.
page 4, you're welcome. On page 4 and 5. So go to page 6, which is the first design review case, in the Northeast Design Review. And 2025002 Cleveland Emerald Senior. This is at 11100 Superior Avenue. This is new construction and this is for schematic approval. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer the penalty of perjury?
I do.
And you are Brian?
I am.
Yes. Okay. Take it away.
Thank you for the commission, to the commission for hearing us today. I am Brian Grambort, project architect from HET DeFrancisco and Siebold. We are joined online by representatives of the developer and owner. This project development is a permanent supportive housing development, multiple sources of funding, but primarily through the low income housing tax credit program of the state. Next slide, please. The development is located on the south side of Superior Avenue, at the intersection of East 111th Street, as you see here in red. It's primarily surrounded. There is the commercial boulevard of Superior Avenue. However, the neighborhood to the south is primarily residential. Next slide, please. You see some photos here of the site. It's primarily undeveloped green space along Superior and East 111th with relatively mature tree development along the south property line bordering those single family properties. Next slide, please. Existing site plan just showing the number of parcels that will be consolidated as part of this development. There are those trees that are X'd out, which we're proposing to remove to accommodate the development of the property. Next slide. More of a figure diagram showing kind of the density, or I guess lack of density around the neighborhood, with our parcel again at Superior and 111th. Next slide, please. Some context photos. These photos are of the existing buildings and structures on the north side of Superior Avenue. Maybe hard to see, but items 1 through 5, with number 5, the Refreshing Springs Ministry, being directly across the street from this property. Next slide, please. And then item photos 6. Back one, please. Photos 6 and 7 also on the north side of Superior. The mixed use photo 6 on the left-hand side is also directly across the street from the property. And then photos 8, 9, and 10 on the right-hand side are on the south side of Superior. Really looking at how brick is very frequently used in these somewhat traditional mixed use and commercial developments. Next slide, please. East 111th, as we noted, is primarily residential, as is 113th, 14th. And as we would expect, you'd see much more residential style materials, porches, gables, those types of elements. And we'll talk about when we get to the elevations how we try to combine those aspects of the surrounding neighborhood. Next slide, please. So the development site plan in this plan, Superior is on the top and East 111th is on the left. The building massing is pushed up against that intersection, that corner. There is a main public entrance off of Superior. There's a little bit of a bump out on that top north side of the building. And that's where the building primarily connects to the right-of-way. Moving counterclockwise onto East 111th, we have a sidewalk that extends from the building. That is to access both a maintenance office for deliveries as well as a trash room. Trash will be maintained within the building, and then on trash days wheeled out for pickup and then wheeled back in, so there is no on-site dumpster. Moving south along East 111th, we have a couple sidewalk connections from the development, and then we have our main vehicular access. It's ungated, unsecured, a two-way entrance into a 25 space parking lot. As I mentioned, this is a senior permanent supportive housing development. We are partnering, or the owner is partnering with both the VA and the Benjamin Rose Institute for services within the building. Through programming discussions, there are certain features that have become required for this. And one of those is a mobile clinic, which we have a parking space kind of within that, just to the south of that turnaround. There's also a cover drop-off, sheltered pickup as part of that turnaround. Couple other elements to note here. We have, as part of that rear entrance, which is what we expect most residents and guests will be using at that inside corner, we also have a covered patio, just a sheltered space, outdoor space for the residents. The site is relatively small, and we do have some limited green space kind of to the southeast corner. We do have what is labeled here a decorative metal fence, but it will be a 6-foot high privacy fence along those property lines that abut the adjacent neighbors. Next slide, please. First floor plan, really wanting to show here in green the public spaces, common spaces that will both activate kind of that rear elevation as well as that corner of the building that fronts along Superior. The grayish blue areas along the right-hand side or east are our resident apartments, and then the pink color spaces are support spaces. Acknowledging, and this was brought up in design review, the proximity of those apartments on the top right to the Superior Boulevard, that we are looking into ways to really try to buffer and protect those windows and those apartments from all of the traffic and the activities along that public right of way. We will be proposing potentially a short fence, a decorative metal fence or some type of masonry fence, potentially. Certainly year-round plantings, higher plantings that will also buffer, and then security screens along those operable windows. Next slide, please. Upper floors is relatively typical, a double-loaded corridor for primarily resident apartments. Next slide. So the elevations of the building, this is the corner of Superior and East 111th, utilizing both brick that we saw in context photos as well as variations of horizontal and vertical siding, trying to hold that corner strong. The building is very close to that corner, so we want to use a good amount of masonry there, and using masonry in a manner that we're trying to emphasize kind of these vertical bays to break up the long linear nature of the building. You see the entrance along Superior on the left-hand side there, and bringing in a bit of the residential neighborhood context with some of the gable and vertical siding treatments at the top that you see. And next slide, please. So some context images trying to give a sense of the mass of the building within the neighborhood, really existing buildings represented just as blocks, but you get kind of a sense. We feel that the way that we're treating the building with the brick and the siding really allows that 4-story building to blend well with the 2- and 3-story buildings in the neighborhood. Next slide. So really just a flat elevation of that front Superior facade. The axonometric on the top left, just mentioning something I forgot to mention on the site plan. As an unsecured site, ownership has decided not to locate any kind of HVAC or other equipment on the ground except for the transformer. So we have kind of alluding to it at the top on the roof, there's an equipment pit up there. So all of the equipment will be up on top of the building instead of scattered around the perimeter. Next slide, please. So the rear of the building, maintaining kind of that brick material on the outside corner on the left, which faces East 111th, and then all the way on the right, which we feel is still going to be visible for those driving by on East 111th. But you see the turnaround, the drop off, covered drop off, and the what we feel is relatively substantial covered patio at the rear, which is just outside of that communal space. Next slide, please. Some more elevations and massing. Next slide, please. Landscaping, acknowledged in design review that some of the renderings did not accurately describe the trees along the property line to the south. We understand that the development is relatively close to that south property line, and that we may be encroaching on some of the root zones of those trees. So, you know, we will work with our landscape architect and contractor to try to maintain those as best as we can, since those trees that are shown to remain are on the adjacent property. Next slide, please. Images of plantings, which we can get into if needed. Next slide, please. And the electrical site plan showing we are proposing primarily pole mounted lighting for the parking lot on the south, which we will have a light study to make sure no light trespasses over to those adjacent parcels, and then primarily building mounted lighting around the Superior and East 111th facades. Next slide, please. Images of the proposed exterior elements. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Before we open it up, or does the staff have any comments about this from design review? I didn't see any. Also, okay, go ahead. Curious.
Staff comments.
Sure.
Commission members. Northeast Design Review, this project was well received.
You want to make sure you use the mic so that
Northeast Design Review, this project was well received with a few recommendations that Brian did speak of correcting or revisiting. Northeast Design Review would like the team to review the front residential windows on Superior to provide separation and protection, and Brian spoke to that. We just thought that it was a little too close for pedestrians and things, especially someone can just step over planting. We thought the windows were a little too close. Frosting the windows or something like that wasn't a good idea. We want to be able to provide the residents full light, so they said they would revisit the windows on Superior and to reconsider the fencing around the transformer and reconsider the fencing between the parking lot and property lines, because most times with code, you have that board on board fencing, something not so opaque against the residential zone. And they did acknowledgement that there may be an issue with the neighbors during construction because of the so close to the property line. And to also consider adding a paved walking loop in the back area for additional space for the residents. And to consider to add some planting material in the front that you saw where there's a bench where people could sit, just to make it more hospitable or pleasurable for people to sit out there when they're just sitting or waiting for pickup. And those are the recommendations from the Design Review Committee.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed this part. Is this a low income tax credit?
This is correct.
So has it been approved already?
It has been approved, received funding from OFA.
When do you plan to start construction?
Construction right now is scheduled to start in the second quarter. So as early as June.
Okay.
If not earlier, possibly May.
The chair, you said this was assisted living?
This is senior permanent supportive housing.
Permanent supportive housing,
So
okay.
there are staff supportive services, caseworkers, offices on site, not getting into kind of the healthcare assisted living type of supportive services.
Okay, so from on the continuum of independent to assisted from a healthcare, it's more independent with support services. To that end, I wonder if it's if it's a big enough parking lot, but beyond that, I want to make sure that the entrance on Superior is not treated as a back door. I think a lot of people will be coming and going directly off of that street, and it seems like it's mid-block between, there's a traffic light at 110th, a traffic light at 115th, and that's where the RTA stops are. So I think we need to work, and this is really on the city side, of figuring out a way to get people safely across Superior at 111th, and maybe work with RTA on the location of bus stops, since it's a pretty far walk from this point. It sounds like staff has a comment on that though, potentially.
Come on up and grab the mic.
I neglected to mention to everyone that this project is also scheduled to go before PetBot. So RTA and everyone will be there to review this project also. So when they come for final, back to local and back to you all of that will be wrapped up and corrected once
Okay.
they attend PetBot on the 17th, I believe.
Okay, and then thank you. If you're able to pass my comments on to PetBot then, and I do think that this is an opportunity for some sort of refuge island in the, you called it a boulevard, it's just too wide of a street, an opportunity for people to safely cross the street, so.
Yes, thank you.
If I could respond to the parking comment. Our office, I have worked with the owner and developer on a number of other permanent supportive housing developments. And we have consistent background evidence of the amount of cars residents typically have. Now, none of those are senior designated. However, a 1 to 3 maximum parking ratio is relatively, that covers parking needs sufficiently. Yeah. If needed, we can provide that documentation as well.
Sure. I also appreciate that we're just limited by the size of it.
Yep.
It's maybe more of a practical decision than a preferred decision even, so.
Yep.
Madam Chair, to the applicant, if you know, I know CHN has a number of permanent supportive housing. Is this the first explicit senior housing?
I believe it is. So Eden, Emerald Development Economic Network will be the ultimate owner, property manager. I believe it is the first senior designated PSH.
Think.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move to approve the project as presented as final. So that there's no need to come back to us. I believe issues that are before you could be resolved at staff level in PetBot.
Right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Gray Scott. Yes. Sergeant,
Yes.
Blythe.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. It's
I
a really
appreciate that.
wonderful project.
Thank you.
Really important. To your point about it being the first senior, it's really important.
Definitely agree. If I could ask a quick question, understanding your comment, does that also apply to design review, that we will work through those comments with
Yes.
planning?
Everything, including PetBot.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I appreciate that consideration. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
By the
And
way,
you-
Charlie, I'm a senior and I'm still.
Oh, you're not senior.
We can cross streets. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we should have a definition of that. Can you please define that? All right, so we got a big one, Bedrock Master Development Plan. This is here for final approval. So everybody's gonna come up, we could share some, what I call microphone. I'm gonna swear everyone in at once. I'm gonna ask to the staff, for order of business, are we going to go presentation first, staff second, commission third? Okay, okay, so we now know the order of business. So a very big moment for all of us, a lot of work, and I'm just gonna open with thank you to the Bedrock team for all the work over quite a long period of time. And so we're excited to hear this. The commission member has actually had time to review this in advance in terms of it being sent to us early. But we work together with Marka, so I want to thank her to make sure that today we have sufficient time. So take your time to run through this and answer all our questions. And so first, do you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury? And as you present, just state your name and we'll go from there.
Okay, good.
You can turn them all on.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning to the commissioners, everybody gathered. Nora Romoff, Vice President of Business Development with Bedrock. I always like to just acknowledge it's a big deal for us to be here. So thank you for having us again. We were here in July, on July 12th, and I understand and appreciate when Director Fields and Chair Curry met that we were asked to really reflect on what's happened since July. I would take that even a step further. We've done that in our presentation, and we certainly welcome those questions. But the full extent of this timeline of the master development plan for this project is over a year. So hopefully that resonates and certainly echoes what the chair said in the opening. I was kind of talking with Dan in the hallway before this. You know, we really see this as a partnership with the city of Cleveland and really cannot thank our city team enough. If I named names, I would forget, but I have to note Katie, Linda, Alicia, Dan for all of their help. Also Suzanne, she's here. And, you know, to Director Fields for really taking on a project in the midst of transition. We appreciate it. We had a meeting in this room just a couple weeks ago with the senior leadership at the city, and we're able to go through our timeline, and they were able to see this deck and reflect on it as well. One of the things I want to note in the staff report is the 56 public comments that we have received as noted in that report. Those complement over 900 comments that we have received from city staff throughout this process that are in our comment tracker, which we will not review together with you today. But please note that this is a document born from that input. This process of the master development plan, as dictated by our master development agreement, runs concurrent with several other initiatives. Obviously, we have a groundbreaking, which is quite exciting, but we also have an ambitious concurrent community benefit agreement that is going through the process now. This is, of course, as we've always said, the first of many iterations of this plan. It was actually created to be iterative. So today we will focus on what we call sequence 1A, but with what most people would see as roughly West 3rd Street to the Eagle Bridge, which we'll show you in visuals. So advised to keep the introduction short. I'll let the team introduce themselves. I am extremely proud to be sitting next to this team and online with our partners at Nelson Nygaard, who can answer any questions about our mobility study and our roadway coordination. So I'll turn it over to the team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, commissioners. Jeffrey Pongonis with MKSK. I'm going to do a little bit of introduction to highlight where we've been over the past, I don't know, 2 years. And then hand it over to Colin Mavis from MKSK to talk a little bit about the meat of the document, public realm, private realm, and then hand it over to Brian Mang from Bioloski to talk a little bit about the architectural guidelines. Feel free to interrupt us along the way for questions. We can refer back to the master document, or we can pause and chat along the way. So again, I'll do a little bit of background and like I said, pass it on to Colin and Brian to dig into the master development plan itself. There we go. So kind of three primary development goals here. You all have seen this before, and thanks for being such great supporters. But from left to right, obviously we want to create an 18-hour neighborhood and utilize this neighborhood to better connect the city to all its great assets. Utilize new infrastructure to leverage new commerce, new housing, new opportunities for recreation and the community to enjoy downtown and the riverfront. And finally, to deliver a new neighborhood that provides equitable opportunities for everyone. And hopefully you've seen that through our process along the way, and we remain committed to that now. So where are we? We launched in 21, unveiled the master plan in 22. We began our public engagement sessions, our community workshops in 23. You all approved the conceptual master plan, the vision, if you will, in 23. With the city, we executed the master development agreement, and then through 23 and 24, approved the Cavs clinic building, very exciting, groundbreaking and whatnot. And here we are today to work through this final piece of the master development plan, building on workshops and information sessions, so on and so forth, partnerships with the city. Colin will talk a little bit more about that as well. This is an image of the master plan from quite a ways back, highlighting that sequence 1A that Nora mentioned, where we just had some sort of blocky massing in for Cavs Clinic. And this next image here gives just a little, just a little bit more definition of what the building massing looks like, what sequence 1A looks like, and how we connect up to Ontario at Eagle Avenue. And I really like this image because it shows the proximity of Gateway to the riverfront, of the riverfront to Tower City and Public Square, and really how well connected this city is, and what an amazing piece of riverfront development this is going to be to even better connect us to these great assets. So diving in just a little bit to the plan itself. Some highlights here. This document is really in place to communicate the vision and how to translate it to the built environment. As Nora said, this is meant to be iterative, evolving, dynamic, adaptable. It is set up like that, and as such, we have adapted and iterated along the way with you and with the city and with Linda and her team, and we appreciate that. This document, as you all know, you've been through it, provides guidance, not so much prescriptions and rules for the neighborhood. So it provides the flexibility that a document wants, so that this thing can grow and evolve with the market and the community, but not so much that it's heavy-handed and stifles design creativity or uniformity. And along the way, we've been cognizant of the plans early on for Gateway, of the vision for the valley. We're cognizant of the design guidelines for the flats and how that will be applied to the work that we're doing and applied to the infrastructure and public realm that we're defining along the way. It's notable that we want to be proactive to coordinate the city, coordinate Bedrock, and the neighborhood and other projects that surround us to connect this project better. The bridges, Canal Basin Park, shorter core efforts, our streets ordinances, and be mindful of traffic strategies. So there's a lot here to balance. And frankly, the sort of team you're looking at now, we like these complex projects. We like working with you, and that's sort of the magic of all of this. So with that, I'll pass it over to Colin to kind of dive into a little bit of the journey that we've been on along the way, and jump into the doc.
So this graphic here shows our process and our ongoing and continued partnership with the city and the staff and with the public. We will note, we received comments during our informational session previously. We wanted to refer back to those during this presentation. And so the comment bubbles up at the top are direct comments from this commission, and we relate to the topics said on each of the slides. So you wanted to hear about the participatory practices and how we're engaging residents and making sure that we're bringing the community along with us. And so prior to this timeline were those individual neighborhood workshops that kicked off with the vision plan. So we had those as a foundation for this master development plan. And then through April and through the summer of 2024, worked through workshops with the city on all the individual components of it. Received comments throughout the summer, came before this commission for an informational session, took those comments and then also opened up the document at that point to public comment through August and September, and then have continued to adapt this document throughout the fall and up until this point, responding and resolving, as Nora has said, and as we noted here, greater than 900 comments with the city. And when we say resolved, we have tracked and commented and responded to each and every one of those. So every one of those comments has been reviewed multiple times and made sure that we've double checked that we're responding to it. And that has helped build what we have today. So this is an outline of how the document is set up. Introduction, guidelines for public infrastructure, guidelines for architecture, and then the resource documents, which are also a very important component of that partnership and ongoing coordination. So just a quick summary as we move through. So this master development plan looks at the full, encompasses the whole project, and it's meant to position this development as a transit-oriented development with fantastic public open spaces, connectivity back to the city, and a coordination and ongoing effort with the city to continue to uplift this area. As you can see here, again, building on those comments that we've heard, making sure that we're showing direct connections and the intention behind what we're showing in our plan. So reconnection to the Gateway District, connections to Tower City Center, and connections to our fantastic riverfront assets and to Bass Trail and the vision for Canal Basin. This document tracks a long timeline. And as such, at the beginning, we set up kind of the framework for that and the rules for how we'll come back and review this document. And so you can see here, this is the conceptual phases that we're thinking about. Blue, phase 1, red, phase 2, yellow, phase 3. In each of those is what we call sequences, and those are the more defined vertical and horizontal developments. Those are the mile markers with which this document will get re-reviewed. So this first iteration of it, knows the fit and form of sequence 1A and can speak specifically to that. And then as you move across the sequences from there, it is the conceptual design and will be adjusted and revised and reviewed with this commission as we move forward. And so you can see, and this is also in the document, kind of lays out what are the major components of each of those sequences and the goalposts that we're working towards, but also with a mindset of, as we move through those sequences, those will be more specifically defined. And so we received comments on themes and comments that we'd received throughout the process. Those align perfectly with the topics and the chapters of this plan. So focusing on mobility, streetscapes, open space, the buildings and the character and form of those buildings, and how we're weaving sustainability throughout. So those goals are shown here, align with very much so with the comments that we've been hearing. And we just want to highlight those alignments here.
So jumping into our public infrastructure chapter, this plan and this document really leans into allowing enabling infrastructure to set the foundation for the quality and success of this project. So there are some major primary moves that need to take place and have been taking place. The bulkhead rehabilitation with that first installation completed, with working with the city on Eagle Ave and that connection back to the Gateway District, the realignment of new roadway down from the current position of canal to unlock those developable parcels. And all of this working in conjunction with other efforts that are going on within the city. And we know that CVSR is a main point of interest for not only the city, but through the public comments and making sure that we're planning for that up front. Walking through our land use and open space sections, making sure that we're proposing and looking at the right level of density and step up as you move towards the central business district while allowing for an accessible riverfront, and planning that riverfront with unique signature green spaces that draw people to and down from the city's core to the city, to the riverfront. We also know that connectivity and the ability for all abilities and users to get down to the river were key themes in the conversations that we've been having. Wanted to highlight here really how we're leaning into that in this document, showing connectivity to towpath and canal basin, showing connectivity to the trails that connect off of the East 9th extension and further down into other pieces of the towpath trail along the river, the traversing links that will come across the site and allow for individual connections that come down from the city fabric to the riverfront, and obviously that all important shore to shore connection. And as this, we've also identified specific areas where we will have accessible routes and provide that all throughout the green spaces that are here, as well as areas that will traverse the grade change. Also noted, and a common theme was, how are we supporting those other modes of transportation? So with bicycle access, making sure that we're showing, again, connection to those multi-use trails with towpath and the Slavic Village connector, the connection and continued coordination with the Bridges Loop Trail that's in our document and noted as part of the infrastructure of Huron Road. And also just allowing for that continuous connection around the site and tying out to existing systems so that we're not dropping people off in a no man's zone. We also heard from this commission being cognizant of not having service areas and dumpsters in the public realm. That has been a foundation of this plan from the beginning. The service access route is meant to run behind all of the infrastructure and the development underground as an offshoot of existing canal, and allowing for a kind of coordinated and efficient model for providing those services without having them constantly impeding the public realm. We've also taken a deep dive understanding how vehicle pickup, drop and egress will happen around the site, and how that works with the new network of roadways with new roadway and the Eagle Ave connection, looking at all lanes, lane types, lane widths, and working with the Nelson Nygaard team on the flows and modeling for that as well. And as part of this, and this was something that we were asked to do, making sure that we're very explicitly tying into the transportation demand management program and noting that where it's applicable, and same with our commitment to complete and green streets. Obviously, looking to be a transit-oriented neighborhood, that's key to this plan, and unlocking that connection to the RTA station under Prospect and providing direct connection there. But also that is a primary component of the public square to Tower City to Riverfront design that is ongoing and is the backbone of this plan for how it is organized. So tying into that is a critical component, as is our connection to CVSR station or potential CVSR station at the Central Ave and West Third location as part of this overall connectivity and coordination of bus, rail, pedestrians. This is probably the most extensive new content. We were asked to define what are the best practices for these zones within the streetscape. And again, wanting to build in that flexibility, this graphic starts to set up what are our minimum and preferred dimensions for each of the zones that are shown for the streetscapes within the plan, with caveats and additional detail in the plan that's not here of, you know, when are these dimensions most appropriate? What is the best width for a cycle track, whether it's on road or on sidewalk? What should those building frontages be when you have space to allow for it? And then being cognizant of that some of our streets just have existing buildings. And so we have to be aware of that and flexible for that as well. I'll hand it over to Brian to walk through our architectural guidelines.
Thank you, Cullen. Brian Meng from Bialaski. So kind of section 3 really dovetails into the section 2 and focuses on the architectural guidelines for the private development. And this section encompasses about, or chapter encompasses about 7 sections. And just to echo what Jeff had said before, you know, this is really about providing guidance and not a prescriptive path of what that specific architecture is, and to really promote the creativity throughout the district and not uniformity. In terms of programming, which is the first section, or the program, you know, a couple things kind of to note here, as the program is really meant to relate to the surrounding context of the core and Gateway and the surrounding neighborhoods, to really promote the active street uses. So putting, you know, program that is active at those levels, and to provide a diverse program, including, you know, different types of diverse housing that really reinforce this as an 18-hour neighborhood. I think the other important part, that an objective of the program, is to allow for flexibility in the future, so it can react to market conditions, you know, as needed as these phases are sequentially built out. A couple of other sections, and you'll probably hear me say a couple of the same kind of reinforcing overarching concepts, but, you know, form, that's really meant to you know, push and reinforce the relationship with the open spaces and the buildings, again, enhancing and prioritizing the pedestrian experience, which is really important, you know, at that street level, but also to be cognizant of the surrounding context, to maintain views both to and from the riverfront and to the downtown core. And setting really reinforces, again, that prioritizing that street level activity, knowing that these buildings are really four-sided, there's really no backs. So again, just prioritizing that use at the street level so that pedestrian interaction is really highlighted. In terms of materials, again, this is, again, not meant to be, you know, a prescriptive path. So, you know, promoting the use of creative, durable, sustainable materials that can be implemented, and not really prescribing a overarching architectural style, but, you know, promoting that creativity, that diversity within those. Parking, that sort of dovetails into section 2 as well to some degree, but, you know, knowing that parking wants to be efficiently located, you know, through wayfinding, allowing people to know where that is, but at the same time, again, prioritizing those active uses at the street level. So to strategically placing those in the right places, you know, when those are not concealed by buildings, that their facades are complementary to the overall context of the district by use of materials, lighting, other screening elements. And it does give nod also to the mobility plan, and references that back to the reference section. Lighting and signage are kind of combined on this slide, but the point of the lighting is to use that to enhance the architectural features of those individual buildings. And signage, we talked about that a little bit in section 2 as well, that there'll be sort of an overarching wayfinding, district signage. But this is really meant to talk about the individual parcels and acknowledging that those will come back, to review design reviews in this body. And again, to kind of create consistency, but again, not uniformity, across the board. So each of those individual parcels can have, their own identity. So, Colin, I'm not sure if you want to talk about this slide or not.
Just wrapping up, and to kind of show in by and some examples of how that feedback has been analyzed and directly applied. So we heard about making sure that we were setting this plan up for the state-of-the-art streets and the ability to plan for that now. So adding that to the document, making sure that specific references and setup for that public art strategy were in the objectives of the public art chapter, and a lot of attention and refocus on the setting and frontage and activation, and making sure that was clear within our document as well. So with that, I think we might have a video.
I'm not sure if we were able, we have a fly through. Yeah. But there's a little bit maybe of a technology situation.
Try our best with the fly through.
Okay, are you gonna act it out? Oh, here it is. Yeah. Before I wait.
Yeah, I can give some orientation here. So right here, we're looking as we're coming down, we're at the Cleveland Steps location at what we refer to as parcel 16, that entertainment block just to your left here, coming down on access with the alignment of the river and providing that kind of expansive moment of taking in the view of the river. Here is, we're at Collision Bend, looking at that space and the breadth of the space there, and potential for programming as well.
Everybody wants to be the dance.
And then looking back from the kayak launch at the full length of the project, taking in the massing and how it complements the backdrop of the city.
One thing to the chair that I'll note is we launched the riverfront.org for the purposes of continuing the identity of this area. It also has served a very practical purpose where we're able to share all of our documents in one place, progress photos for the public. I would encourage you, if you wish, to go there to watch the fly through again. It's streamlined somehow on the website, and we will continue to release those fly-throughs. I think it provides really nice context. I know it did for me, just in terms of the scale and scope of what we're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Fly-through was very helpful. So we'll first hear from Dan, and then we'll open it up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, the whole Bedrock team. It's been a pleasure working together all this time. Like you said, more than a year on this particular project and several years on really the vision. So just wanted to say from our perspective at staff, we recommend approval of the document as a guide for the future development. I'm really here just to speak on the public comment that we've received to date. We got about 57 comments. In addition to a lot of additional stakeholder outreach that the Bedrock and the city team have done.
just an overview there. CVSR made up about half of those comments. There's a strong desire just to see that line extended all the way to Tower City. And I think just the announcement of CVSR's, like that study going on in conjunction with that, stirred those ideas in our community. Additional themes that came out of that was just desires for world-class, high-quality pedestrian and bike infrastructure, overall general support for the project, an emphasis on ADA accessibility given the grades, and river safety overall, given that we're still a very commercial riverfront. For all the successive projects coming forward, I just wanted to kind of, gear us up for what's to come, right? There's going to be several new projects, these additional sequences. And so our key considerations on those going forward, there's two things from a staff perspective that we want to emphasize, and we think Bedrock's really kind of set the stage for. And that's just general public and ADA connectivity through the exterior spaces. Accommodating that in all these future developments, both from here on all the way to the riverfront and between those individual development parcels. That's something that we've heard from the community, from staff time and time again, and the document now reflects that, which is pretty exciting. And those are things that we'll have to hold front of mind because we're really going to, it's one step at a time, right, from this point forward. And then additionally, how do we build that district character across all of these development parcels? I mean, we are defining a new district, and we really want to dig into what makes it a really vibrant, wonderful place to, move through, but also linger in and really enjoy those riverfront views. This is something from a Cleveland perspective. We don't necessarily have a lot of pleasant experiences on our river right now, and this is going to be what we are hoping a world-class experience. It's something for Clevelanders can experience for the first time since, 18 whatever, right? So it's exciting in that way, and we'll have to really review those project by project and try to continue that consistency across. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Commission members, I have a couple just quick questions. Can you go to the overall, back to the beginning, just one of the plans? These are on the same. Sure. Big one is, I love how you put this. I heard it. Yeah, it's flexes. And I remember back a year ago as you started it.
Oh, Madam Chair, your microphone.
As you started, there was really this sense of the powerful axis of Tower City Center itself, and that idea and the rethinking of what I think in this graphic it shows. You can leave it here because this will be, I can ask both questions here. But I'm just curious, and it's probably to you, Nora, what's changed about your thinking about Tower City Center itself a year later, and what's working and what's not?
Sure. Madam Chair, I appreciate this question. We get it often, and it speaks to, well, malls and shopping centers may be, going away. The importance and the significance of Tower City as a place remains. And it does for me as well. I walk through there every day to go to work, and I kind of can't believe it. So what has remained the same is that Tower City is the primary source of entry to this development. It will serve as a connection to and from the rapid transit lines that we co-host together with RTA, as well as the hub of Public Square. It also creates a primary backbone to not only our shore to core, but the mayor's shore to core to shore vision that we partner together with the city on. What we have learned is, number one, if you're in Tower City ever, please note, and I have to say this publicly, how clean and lit and well maintained the space is. We continue to keep it as an active space. It's also open 24 hours a day. What we are learning is the ability to retrofit the space is an evolution. And we just last week pulled our full strategic team together to talk about how that continues to be a priority. And that Tower City, as indicated in the master plan, will serve as that promenade to to the development and back. You know, we want to connect to and from and really recreate that horizon line. So I think Jason Russell, who is my colleague and really in charge of the care and feeding of Tower City, and my hat goes off to Jason and his team every day, has very much focused on that, and that has not let up at all in the last year.
We haven't evolved to thinking of like what to do with it from programmatically out a year later.
We have, and to be fair to the Tower City team, I would defer to the chair. We are looking at ways to take an existing structure and to make sure that we use it to its highest and best use. In terms of the current tenants of Tower City, we've also tried to maintain what they need. And in terms of design, program, and tenants, that is very much an ongoing conversation at Bedrock.
Okay. And then my second question kind of could be for you guys, could be maybe for the city, because it's not your responsibility, is I think I have a better sense on the clinic side over there about what the kind of what happens at the ends, like what this connects to from a potentially civic public infrastructure point of view. If I get on a bike there and what I'm connecting to. I really have a question on the other side where it like stops at Carter. Like, what happens at Carter, or what for now? Is it like it just stopped there, or like eventually do I get to where are you hoping this goes and connects over there?
Yeah, and it's a question like that we've been really digging into, since I've been with the city. And so really what is there is going to be Canal Basin Park, which is a really exciting project that just came before the commission.
Does Canal connect right there? I guess what I'm saying is like, why? Do you show it on any maps where I can see like what, do you have a couple, can you go back to show it?
It's not in this stuff.
Because I don't recall when Canal Basin came last week, them showing it. So, and you're not showing it, so I'm just curious, like it wasn't on either.
Exactly.
We, but actually, to the chair and Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt it all. So we've met with the Canal Basin team, and certainly when the master plan or the plan for their area was introduced, we celebrated with them. And we actually have a very strange connection. There's a physical kind of, it looks like a pot that connects to Canal Basin Park. And we've talked with them about, well, why don't we, kind of share this area together, and also the connection, not just to Canal Basin Park, to the B&O, and also to the Riverwalk. So because I have a mic in front of me, I am Merritt Chase. We had a great conversation with Merritt Chase when they came on board, and continue to work with them and offer them anything that we could do to help.
Well, I think it's probably a responsibility to the city to begin to show the full spectrum there. And so, especially if there still looks like there could be a gap, but I don't know what that is. And I don't need to resolve that today. It's obviously just seems like you're working on it and is important to think about it. So when other things come to us, we can connect them. I do agree with the comment that I think, Dan, you made about the, I wouldn't say this is the only place along the river, but I mean, I think perhaps East Bank would take, would want to have a conversation with you about what you said. But I also think Irishtown Bend is obviously going to be another place that is a very massive stretch like this of new publicly accessible riverfront. And so I'm really asking this because I love it. These are just giant pieces. But our job, our responsibility as a commission eventually is to hold accountable, not this team, but everybody else along the way to make sure it all connects eventually. And so I think for staff going forward it'd be nice to see a map of these major investments, and for us to at least keep in mind where those private gaps still are, so we can be the steward of knowing what's between all of these amazing
Yeah.
developments, because there still are gaps, and we've got to work on them. So,
And I've been, since the Canal Basin meeting, I've been working on a map to do just that. So I'll have something to share with you soon.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I'd like to sort of extend what you just started, because I think your question concerning Tower City is relevant. But I think as we start looking at mobility studies and this whole shorter core, which I still don't understand, it sounds nice, because if we don't figure out how people move in and around downtown and how we get people to Tower City, as opposed to just driving, this not just driving, it could be an issue in my personal opinion. So, when we start looking at how this stuff sort of connects, what's that connective tissue that's going to tie all this together? We have good parts, but what's going to pull it all together? And we need to be cognizant of that. And lastly, more importantly, I appreciate the fly through. I'll go on online. I think as you guys study that, I think Drew brought this up last time in terms of massing. I'm almost still convinced that fly through convinced me that maybe those two towers, the taller towers, should not be in the middle. From a massing standpoint, that frame Tower City, I think we should give it a little bit of relief and allow it to be what it is. But that's the kind of stuff you study in those types of models. That's why you create them. I think that's going to inform a lot of decision making as you move forward and as the plan evolves and as you begin to sculpt what's going to happen. Thank you.
Let's share to Mr. Fluker. One note we didn't mention is we've worked with the city quite a bit on the companion documents that include our mobility study, but sit as I hate to say this, almost an appendix of our appendix, but we wanted to have reference documents that have both informed our process, born from our process, like our mobility study, but also the city's concurrent initiatives that were created, in some cases introduced or ongoing as our MDP has evolved.
I would say, I think the line of my questions are because it is incredibly powerful, kind of as big or bigger than Gateway in terms of, kind of what it represents for the city. So it's raising these kind of things outside your scope questions. So know that it's coming from that place. The next one I'm about to say is not your responsibility, but because it's so amazing and you can imagine that this is going to incrementally happen, it's re-raising for me to the city to really, really revive the thinking around Ontario. And especially now the piece of Ontario basically to Eagle that is left off of here. So I think that the responsibility has to be like that. I mean, way back to my CPA days when I was working at George Prairie, and that was my running loop. You make this loop and you actually stay on that side of Ontario, not the Gateway side. And the sidewalk is small and it's actually a vista in and of itself. It's actually the top of this as important as the one that is there. So to the city, I know we've had discussions a lot about Ontario between Public Square and Gateway, but this raises for me, like Linda finishing that because it's really unfinished, and it's really important that that be fully realized, catalyzed by this project.
And let me add to that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Linda Henriksen, and at one time lived on the 5th floor of City Hall for about 30 years. And the city brought me back just to work on Bedrock. But I think you're going to start seeing changes along Ontario sooner than you may anticipate. One is related to the Bedrock project, because this week we permitted some of the first work to take utilities out of the Eagle Viaduct and move them into, actually to the north, going under the railroad tracks. So they're gonna have to do some site clearance along there. So we continue to have electrical feed through the property, but also I think the Memorial Bridges loop will start to address some of that in the near term. Then we are actively working on rebuilding, doing the planning to rebuild Eagle Avenue Bridge from West Third to Ontario. And I think just working through that whole intersection of Ontario and Eagle is going to be very critical to make sure it works for everyone, for vehicles, for bikes, for pedestrians. And so you'll be seeing that in the coming months.
Anybody else? So one last question before someone makes a motion. What does final mean? When will we see you next? You won't never come back. What's coming next?
To the chair.
Next steps.
Do you want me to read this? Huh? I will say from the Bedrock perspective, we are definitely coming back. So there's kind of maybe a binary approach, if you will. On the master development plan, we will come back once determined together with the city, the next iteration or the next likely sequence, which is 1B, which will build from what we have done and it will complement that. In terms of immediate next steps for the project, we are coming back in the very near term for our public realm elements that include the kayak launch, the river walk, and the streetscapes along Eagle and West 3rd Street. We're doing a lot, yeah.
We are doing a lot. And I'm actually working closely with all of the departments on the 5th floor. MOCAP, building and housing, planning, not just to permit projects, but also doing the planning. So the next thing you'll probably really detailed planning we are doing is a feasibility study with NEPA documentation for the roadways associated with this. And so that is going to really, we hope, do a deep dive in looking at the infrastructure and how we integrate Cleveland moves and new approaches to infrastructure planning of the streetscape, the roadway, but really focused on how intersections work. And as Nora said, coming back for the public realm elements, but also we'll be coming back with the items in the Cavs clinic facility that need to be brought back to you. Even though we approved the final architecture, we still need to look at the whole site development, the public art, signage and lighting to finalize it. So that'll be coming forward. So, and then there are the associated projects like the Memorial Loops Trail, I think is our biggest focus right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'm the motion maker today. Okie dokie. Madam Chair, I move to approve Bedrock's proposal as presented and as vetted for final approval, with the caveat that we'll continue to see them as the projects move forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll just say before we vote, I thank you again. I mean, it's a just sets a high bar for a couple things for me. One is the city really working together with you and shepherding something so powerful through a process which is going to go on for many years. But this is the only way, so you don't just get a piecemeal kind of building of buildings. The only way you do something transformative and game changing like this. So it's just a big thank you for that coordination. It's so nice to see, and for something that I think as I sit and I ask all these like reverberation questions is because I can see the basically how this is going to make generational impact, and we'll be looking back towards it from all places down there now. And so it's reoriented actually how us as a commission are going to start to look at other things that are going to come because of this. And so thank you. Actually, I think the guidelines are great. I love that they're not too prescriptive and that they will evolve. So that's my comments. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Gray Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant,
Yes.
Slay.
Motion carries. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thank
2
you,
weeks.
everybody.
Just kidding. All right, we have one more, and then we have a special presentation. It's public art. Excuse me. You're good. We got you. We got you. This is 185th Street Streetscape, United and Rising Sculpture at the corner of 185th and LaSalle. Tara, are you online or here? Oh, you're here. I thought I saw you on there.
I am there too.
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you here to present billboards?
No.
Oh, just kidding. I like messing with.
So, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
Oh, fancy. Okay. I am actually going to introduce this project. The project, the East 185th Street Streetscape, is part of the public art program. It generated the 1.5%. We went through the call for artists, interviewed some finalists, and then you all approved the Selected Artist Master Collective, which is a group of hyper-local artists in the neighborhood led by Robert Gatewood, who's here virtually to go through the presentation. The location is across the street from the LaSalle Theater, which Robert is also very involved with. And this was approved unanimously by the Public Art Committee on January 31st. What you're seeing today is the almost fully developed concept for the artwork. There's one piece that's not going to be presented today, but I think we have enough to get a final approval versus a conceptual approval with consideration of that particular component coming back to the Public Art Committee. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Robert to go through his presentation.
Hey, Robert, can I first swear you in? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right.
Am I good to go?
You are, and your presentation is up, so just let us know when you want them to change the slides.
Can do. Appreciate all of you for giving me a few minutes today to express my humble appreciation for this project. It's been a long time coming, and we're all really excited about it. I'm Robert Gatewood. If you don't know me, I'm a Collinwood resident, business owner, homeowner, and general cheerleader for the city, but specifically for my neighborhood. This project, United and Rising, is a small piece of the streetscape, which has been a long time coming and is nearly done. So if we can get to the next slide, I'll try and be as quick as I can in case you have questions. So yeah, that's me. The faces you see on this sheet, was everyone given this presentation separately? If not, we can go back because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but I'm leading about 7 or 8 folks. You see 3 pictured. There were folks previously listed that aren't here now, but only because everyone that's on board wanted to make sure we're ready for the next 4-month run for when the project's done. Everybody that's involved is either a resident of the city, resident of Collinwood, or a cheerleader of the neighborhood. Contemporary art and graphic design experiences all over the place, youth and special needs education, and you'll see why those are important components coming up. I'm grateful that our councilman has been very involved, his office as well. And the project is a sculpture, but it's also kind of a public development of action around the neighborhood project. So next slide. Okay, you got it. So the main point was to create a 3-point focus for the project, create a permanent art installation that everybody here and visits finds attractive. We're almost done with that. The original piece was built by a local sculptor who had a studio on Waterloo named Jerry Schmidt, awesome guy. And we have engagements with Cleveland State University and possibly Institute of Art, depending on timing and approval processes. The second point was to do it collaboratively because I wanted to make sure if we had a piece that lived for 20 years, people who lived here and their kids could have a piece of saying they were a part of developing it. There are going to be public feedback rounds for a piece of the art that is yet complete, but conceptually not too different from the totem you see on the bottom of the page there. That's already, there's one of those at the north end of the street. There's going to be one at the south, with our sculpture being the center. And then the third piece was empowering hyperlocal folk to be a part of the community building. That's going to be the promotions component. So we could go to the next slide. What you see pictured here is the primary component. Was built by Jerry Schmidt. It's a anodized aluminum, statue, and it's going to be part of the statue that's actually installed on the concrete that's already at LaSalle and 185th Street. The pieces that you're going to see depicted are going to be developed in the same way that this sculpture was, and with techniques used for the totem that has already been installed at the north end. The person listed before, Andriana, she's going to be my design partner. She's going to help me with regard to promoting and communicating the process to people. And the artist will help develop the 4 pieces that are yet to be created that will be depicted later. Next slide, please. Upon approval, the main thing for me was to get places of community use, to have youth and older folks come in and tell their stories about the neighborhood. So the pieces that are yet designed are going to be inspired by a lot of the information we learned through having an engagement meeting at O.H. Perry. It's a elementary school, LaSalle Theater, Cleveland State University. The details are yet developed, but everyone is kind of waiting for this final step so we can plan them. I'm going to partner with John Kopic. The Euclid and Collinwood Observers are going to be a main way we get people to tell their Collinwood stories and inform us of how we're going to make the art that is about to be depicted. Next slide is almost the most important one. So this picture is a rendering of what will exist. The metal that you see, the steel, exists already. The blue is going to be developed almost identically to how the steel or the aluminum already exists. It's called United and Rising, and without going into too much detail, the idea is all the parts of our community coming together to move forward and upward, and we're supposed to use our heritage and our nature to do that. So you've got this art piece that exists, and there's going to be a helix railroad that will seat itself inside the art piece. When it's complete, it'll be about 6 feet tall, 3.5 feet deep, about 3 feet wide. And the base underneath, there's a 4-foot square concrete block already. On top of that is what we're calling the compass map. Each of the 4 directions is going to have a piece of art that is a digital capture of traditional art applied via vinyl, weather-safe vinyl, to steel to be the base for the sculpture. And that development is very similar to how the steel for our totem at the north end of the street is, where it's weather-safe vinyl on steel to be able to withstand the temperate changes that our neighborhood tends to see, safe for weather, safe for salt, things like that. I think that's the majority I need here. So next slide, please. Once we get to the place where the piece is complete, we're going to partner with the Ariel LaSalle Theater. The new owner, Radhika Reddy, is familiar with and supportive of a lot of the community initiatives going on. We'll have a commemoration event, ribbon cutting, of course, but local vendors, conversations around the product or the process of making the final sculpture. And with final approval, we begin booking it and trying to get all of you fine folks out for a good time in Collinwood to thank you for supporting making this project possible. Next thing is the most important slide. It's a little bit complicated to explain, so this one I need a little time on. If we can go to the next slide. So the sculpture itself is easy enough to see. The compass map, you see 4 colors on this sheet. Those colors are not representative of anything creative. It depicts that each direction is going to have an art lead, making art that's captured and applied digitally via the vinyl that's on top of it. The compass map itself is going to be steel, probably about an inch thick, with the vinyl applied on top, a single piece of vinyl with the designed artworks captured, and a frame demarcating north, south, east, and west. The Benjamin Moore colors that are depicted are the colors that were selected for the totems that's already out on the street. So we know the powder coated nature of it and the color both are weather safe and apply correctly to the streetscape as it's being developed. It'll only be the brilliant blue for a point of reference. The other 2 are just the colors that were also on the totem. Each color is going to be directed by one of those artists you saw previously listed, or possibly a collaboration thereafter. And if needed, I can get you those steps, but meeting with Tara and the design review, they would be getting the final pieces of art that are going to be depicted on that vinyl. And that is it for the project, I believe. I think that's the last slide. So I want to leave any other opportunity to answer questions, and I thank you again.
My question is just, is this going to be owned and maintained by whom?
The city would maintain it.
Would own and maintain.
Would own and maintain it, yeah, because it's generated through the public art program.
Anybody? Questions? Any thoughts?
We're really talkative today.
Uh-oh.
No, this is
Any food preferences or things that could be useful for the community to be out? Want to thank you for allowing us to do this.
This is a wonderful job. Thank you. I'm going to move to approve the sculpture as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Congratulations and thank you for all you are doing for the neighborhood. Really.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Anthony?
Yes.
Fluker?
Yes.
Curry?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Sergeant?
Motion carried.
Slight.
Motion carries. Thank you. We will come out. When will this be installed?
Depending on how the contract itself works out, I'm aiming for as soon as it's warm, the first warm day
Okay.
possible.
In the spring.
All right.
Late spring or early
All
summer.
right.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you
right.
so
We
much.
have one mandatory referral. It's ordinance 1192-025. This is authorizing the mayor and Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to purchase property located between Starkweather and Professor Avenues to expand Lucky Park in Tremont. There's a lot of, just you? Why is everyone still here? Just kidding. We only have one more thing.
I think that's why they're here. Yeah, this is special presentation.
Oh, got it. So that's why everybody's here?
Yes.
Okay. I just wondered.
It just like
It's for information only though. All right, go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julian Wilson. I'm a project manager in the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects. I'm here to present a request for legislation authorizing the Director of Parks and Recreation to purchase a parcel that is adjacent to a parcel that is currently, you can go to the next slide, please. Currently adjacent to 0041798, which is Lucky Park. And so the reason we want to acquire this additional parcel is to expand the park. So next slide, please. This is a location map where you can see the original park, the 98, and then the additional parcel to be acquired, the 97. And then if you go to the next slide, there's a street view. So those bushes in the middle going to the edge of that parcel is the first one. And then towards the back with the benches and the table, that's the additional parcel that we'll be acquiring.
And then if you go to the next slide, Tremont West, CDC has agreed to maintain and improve the park, but this is a park where community members contribute to the maintenance of the park. And so that will be, that's how the park will be maintained. And the existing property adoption agreement will be amended so that this newly acquired parcel will be included. Are there any questions?
We have a motion?
I move for approval of ordinance number 119-2025 for the purpose of maintaining and improving the park.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant, your Slight,
Yes.
It's always a good thing when we're acquiring land for parkland versus the reverse. So thank you for that.
Community members love their parks.
Yeah, it's true. And it's really important. So we have one administrative approval. Take a quick look at it. Are there any questions? Let me know. Otherwise, we'll need a motion.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 107-2025.
Second.
Motion and a second. Just want to note, there was some question about this administrative approvals. That slate on agendas is really for things coming back or things that are administratively going on to council. And so we normally never have presentations unless there are questions. So call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Sergeant, Slight,
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, our last item. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out for so long. Is a special presentation called Economic Infill Housing. This is for information only. So we're very excited to hear what this is all about.
Thank you. We're really excited to have the opportunity to share this too, because it's something we've been working on for about 8 months now in partnership with the Planning Commission. My name's Trudy Andreski. I'm the Bureau Chief of Neighborhood Revitalization. And I wanted to take a quick minute and shout out our Bureau who is here. So the Land Bank Office and the Asset Redevelopment Office. This is literally all of us. So everything related to Land Bank, everything related to RFQs that you see coming out. And we're really proud of that work. But we have a really mixed group of people who started at the city a couple of months ago, people who have been here for years and have never been to a planning commission meeting. So I thought it was a nice opportunity just to see what it's all about. But thank you for taking the time. I know it's been a long morning already, so we'll be succinct in our presentation. So we at the Department of Community Development have been working over the past several months on an economical infill housing project with 3 different architecture firms who have been amazing partners through this process. Byron, do you mind passing me the clicker? I'm sorry. Thank you. And I'll have my guests. Okay. Thank you. Introduce themselves in just a minute, but I wanted to give a little bit of background what we've been working on. So we know, and I think the commission knows very well, that property surveys through research at the local, state, county levels and beyond, that we're experiencing a very intense housing cluster and lack of available, quality, affordable, and attainable housing here in the city. We've not been seeing a lot of new construction under $400,000, and that's something we're really interested in. Particularly by marrying that with a lot of the available asset that we have at our disposal, which is our land bank inventory. We're bringing 2,000 persons in our inventory. We know that there's a big gap that's commonly referred to as missing middle housing that's needed across both Cleveland and lots of cities alike. So coupling both community developments existing home rehab programs with us market-based approach that rather than subsidizing the construction itself, trying to create a product that the market can support that is high quality. So with that, the parcels that we've been looking at are not specific. Basically, we took the average, which is about 4,000 square feet with a frontage of 30 feet, and try to design basically some housing that would fit on the standard but unidentified parcel. So I just bring up this specific parcel. And then specifically, these architecture firms have helped us explore existing neighborhood conditions and attempt to design single-family detached homes. $100,000, $175, $250, possible a tiny home for about a $25,000 construction cost. The deliverables specifically would create a conceptual site plan, elevations, and floor plans. Determine a justifiable cost methodology, and then acquisition and permitting costs are separated out from this. A couple of the considerations that we would for opportunities to support. Could we make a product that's specifically geared for that through this process? Optional garage add-ons, but those are not included in this pricing. I think one of the things that really energized me throughout this process is that the firms that we were able to partner with. That I will pass it on to our teams. If one could before we start, do you mind if we just do a little? We are
Next, a question before you go. Is the goal, just so as I'm leading, is the goal that these are like open source? Now that you've done this, any developer can do it, or like is this to get out ideas, or is it that somebody's got to go work with one of these firms? Like, what's the goal?
We're still in that kind of ideation phase of what comes next. We'd like to go forward with construction drawing pricing from here and then determine next steps.
But there's no like developer or person who's going to finance this yet. This is just
not yet, but we are in those conversations. Yeah.
Okay. Madam Chair, I do have a question. I think you might have answered it. How you arrived at some of the costs for each product. I just want to make one comment before you move forward. I think the tiny house you can't do it, but you could do it if you could share infrastructure, because you're going to pay tap fees for as much as it costs that the house is valued, unfortunately. So if you could come up with a cluster and share property and have one sewer or utility line, that could be an option. So I'm going to be quiet and listen now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Kurtz with J. Kurtz Architects. We are here in Cleveland in Midtown, and I'll let others introduce themselves. Happy to be here.
I'm Byron Myers. I'm Byron Myers, Byron D. Myers Architect LLC. I'm in First, Ohio.
And I'm Jonathan Rickey with West of West Architects. We're actually based in Los Angeles, but I'm a Cleveland native, and parents are still here. So cheerleader for the city, as Robert would say.
And really quickly, I'm McKeel Wackers. I'm Assistant Director for Community Development. I'm here as long as I can, but I wanted to sort of also frame this in addition to what Trudy said, which was very valuable, but why this project is really important, especially for our department, but more importantly for the city. You guys were all instrumental in taking the 10-year housing plan and adopted it in December 2021 with this body, and making sure that we bring our work to the Planning and Zoning Commission and Planning Commission is critical in terms of the greater support that's needed to drive public policy in the city of Cleveland. From that 10-year housing plan, this project really arose and is really allowing us to create the framework to tackle big problems and find ways to create scale in providing solutions that the city of Cleveland needs. Just an example, in the plan that you guys adopted in 2021, we've been able to manage with Trudy's leadership, increasing the number of sales that have occurred. She processed, I think, 1,115 applications for the land bank last year, she and her team. Tony Mango, our chief over housing development, was able to increase the production typically from 200 to 300,000, 2 to 300 units of affordable housing in production each year to now that he has a portfolio of 2,200 units in production. Those things don't happen in foundational documents like a 10-year housing plan. Those things don't happen with studies like this, which will create a real foundation to tackle the issues like you brought up. How do you get units that work for the city of Cleveland, maximize lots, get us away from sort of the more traditional practices that worked in the past, and where the new traditional practices that need to be adopted that we can move going forward. So with that, I'm going to shut up and stay here as long as I can. And I'm going to let these great architects do what they do best. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess I get the opportunity to go first, but so I think it's one, the project itself has been really rewarding to be engaged in, because I do think, we've even though each of the firms is kind of separate, I think there's been a lot of kind of camaraderie in terms of presenting our work to each other and kind of shared experience. So that's been great. Our unit is really kind of, we tackled our kind of project as a way to just create a base framework that we think can be viable at several of these different price points, and that also can kind of be built on in the future. So thinking about ideas of, not just the initial cost, but kind of wealth generation. So we started with this idea of how do we decouple the value of a home from, some of the kind of real estate economies. And, I think the core notion that we had is that, the home we design should be a place that we would want to live in as much as at the $100,000 level, as much as the $250,000 level or beyond. And so creating kind of a flexible shell that deals with kind of material quality and life cycle versus cost just to scale. I think that's kind of one of the conceits that we've been looking at. And then also, in thinking about as the city kind of clarifies the way these might be implemented, I think we had some of the same questions about, is this a plan that's going to a developer, or is this, somebody can go in and kind of access these plans and they can build it themselves? I think we wanted to think about maintenance because I think, somebody who's buying $100,000 home, it may not be just the capital cost, but it might be, how much takes year over year. And so if this is an investment by the city, it pays to make it highly maintainable. And then, kind of a value added conceit of thinking about the green infrastructure that, this kind of maybe overly lofty notion that, maybe some of these land bank properties can actually become kind of economic generators. So if the property could be kind of a framework for solar energy, that solar energy could power the house, reduce the total operating cost, and ultimately maybe, these neighborhoods could start to sell electricity back to the grid. That's not a proposal, that's just we've discussed it. Our cost assessment, we essentially wanted to go through and separate material and labor costs. We itemized kind of each component. So we didn't do a cost per square foot. We kind of graded out each piece of the project. You see that delineated here. And I think, August, to your point, the version of the tiny home couldn't quite find its way to the objective yet, but we did what we're considering kind of within the same framework, a triplex that could start to, if you did 2 triplexes on the same lot, maybe you start to kind of defray the cost. So when you look at the costs at the bottom, the 250 is a little bit below, the 100 is a little bit above, but if you kind of thought of somebody developing a set of these, maybe you start to achieve the overall economic goal. So the form is really basic, but it goes back to kind of basic principles of solar optimization. So it really became about, this 33-degree angle for, sunlight here in Cleveland and the roof being developed along that trajectory, and then having one low spot for gutter cleaning and a single slope roof. And I think the lot varies, but we thought about this house, the form always facing south. So there's kind of precedent in older architecture for that, but that it could actually create a different image depending on where it was within the block. So at times it's really just a 27 by 27 by 27 cube, a 9 square grid that's kind of cut at the bias. And at times, the form kind of, I think, changes your perception of the house, and ultimately, I think can start to adapt to what the homeowner brings to it. Oh yeah, sorry. And this slide is really just kind of a conceptual overview. I think as we were developing this kind of 9 square grid house, we wanted to kind of focus on the idea that it wanted to be a place where we like to live as well, at any price point. And I think, the Villa Rotunda on the left is obviously a very formal arrangement. The Hutong on the right is a typology that is quite different, but still has kind of a void at the center. And I think one of the ways we thought about the different price points of this house are that as a family grows, you might say, well, I'm just a recent graduate and I want to buy $100,000 house in Cleveland, and then eventually I have a partner, and then eventually we have a kid, and that the house could actually grow through that. And the Hutong is kind of a typology that has this courtyard at the center, but often had extended families staying in different wings. So just I think that kind of spirit of how a certain typology might evolve. We design the openings. So these are minimum openings based on meeting the form-based building code that was recently adopted. So different street elevations, as you could see, at times it could feel like a ranch. Times it could feel, almost like a center hall colonial with the northern facade kind of facing the street, and then other kind of informal arrangements. And on the rear elevation is just with the windows and everything turned off, knowing that it in its construction typology, it could be adjusted based on somebody's price point. So if it wasn't, if somebody wanted a little extra window, it's just, paying for that extra window. The other thing is all of them have this kind of center area, which is a skylight. And I think that kind of amenity also there's this kind of, we don't want this to feel like, a certain type of housing that somebody has to be relegated to. We want it to feel like kind of an ambitious accomplishment. And so that skylight brings light, and it's kind of non-normative. So flexible living space in the center. The core unit is a bathroom on the upper left, and enter from the south. So 725 square feet on one floor, and then a loft on the next. And I'll go through some images of that. And then as that evolves, you could imagine, a couple living here, there's a bedroom and they want to use the loft as workspace. And so it kind of becomes a fairly effective, almost large studio apartment. And then, and more at higher price points, even being able to accommodate 2 bedrooms on the upper level. If somebody wants to focus on cooking, a larger kitchen, but always kind of centered around this central living area. And then the triple unit is basically the same footprint and floor plan, but unit left and right on the ground floor and a unit in the loft on the second floor. So that's where we get the kind of 3 units in their space. Sorry, I'm taking a little longer. So this would be the elevation from the street in the east facing version. So the south would be to the left. We're imagining, material could be variable, but using like a basic board and batten, which could be a Trex material or wood. This is kind of the center hall colonial look, and more of a ranch style. And so these could also be kind of expanded in any direction. And then this would be the interior. So at the base level, it's really very basic. I mean, it would be a place that I would maybe want to live out of college, which is just like for the slab, you frame it in. I have a sink, a fridge and a microwave, and I'm an artist and I just want to live in the city. But the framework really always stays the same. And as that grows, this would be the loft space in that in any of these base models. So you get kind of a smaller loft area, which could be desk area or kids play area. And then as that evolves, we have this kind of central curtain that provides some privacy around that central space. And you get these kind of strategic views out. And then at the kind of high-end model, even thinking about like a terrarium inside that space, but kind of putting something at the center of this really modestly sized home that still makes it kind of personalized, et cetera. So I think, so that's where we end. And I think, what's been maybe satisfying is just the idea that we've been able to treat the house as kind of an organization, a way of organizing space that I think can grow over time, and that ultimately additions and things like that can grow with the person, as opposed to feeling like, going from 100 to 250 is a matter of like just getting more house. So that's, I'll pass it on. Sorry if I went too long.
Oh, let's see. How do we advance with this guy here?
It's a little delayed.
Okay,
Just click it. And then...
Very delayed. Okay.
Yeah.
This is $100,000 concept, and this is a contemporary ranch style single story with a cathedral ceiling, and it can function as a starter home, single person home, single parent and child, or an empty nester. And the form is like a shotgun plan. It's a linear plan for a narrow linear site. I use a shed roof for economical reasons. And as far as the porch, I wanted to bring people from the backyard more so into the front of the house, so there'd be more social interaction, within the neighborhood. So kind of making the front porch a major, not major, but important. As far as the basement, it's a 7-foot high ceiling, 450 square feet with laundry area. And on the first floor, I wanted to have an open plan with cathedral ceiling. Social common area would be the living room, kitchen, bathroom, and front porch. And the private areas would be the 2 rear rooms that are in the back. As far as the site, the front yard, we've got a green buffer as far as the setback. And with the house orientation, with it being a shed roof, I figured you could go with either 2 side by side where they could play off of each other and form a shape or a Y shape, depending on its orientation. But it's just another way of getting more out of the plans as far as manipulating them. The exterior building materials, I wanted to go with metal panel siding, wood panel siding, 1x6 slats, wood trim, asphalt shingle roof, and a poured foundation and stairs. As far as the proposed project amount would be 105,304, and the gross square feet would be 272 square feet. And that's basically a section cut through the residence.
Madam Chair, to Byron, what's the width? What was the width, the dimension?
35 feet as far as the
No,
site.
the building.
The actual building, I think I added it 20 because I wanted to keep modules.
Thank you.
4. And this is 175,000. And these areas, like I was looking at areas like in Slavic Village and along Harvard between 116th and 93rd Street. It's just a big, big open field. And some of these, and then some of the houses in Slavic Village were like the lower shotgun style houses where, there were like a lot of vacant lots in between those. So it's not like I just wanted to plant something anywhere, but I just wanted it to kind of have some continuity with the rest of the neighborhood. This is the 175,000 design concept. Contemporary 2-story residence with 3 bedrooms and full bath, half bath. The function, I felt that it would be ideal for a single person, single parent children, or a starter home. The form, once again, is a shed roof for economical reasons. And the front porch was had monumental stairs. And that was partially for social interaction and neighborhood security. And as far as the plan, the design was a full basement, 7-foot high ceilings, 490 square feet with the laundry area. First floor, I wanted to have an open plan. The open plan, less walls, less cost. Social common area would be the living room, dining room, kitchen, half bath on the first floor and the front porch. Second floor would be our private area where we have cathedral ceilings in both the 3 bedrooms and the bathroom. As far as the site, it kind of dictates the previous one where you'd have a green buffer setback and the orientation, once again, you could reverse the plan and the optional features as far as having a garage, rain barrel, board-on-board fence, a garden, chicken coop, and a compost bin. These are like, I was thinking about incorporating the chicken coop and compost bin into the garage design. And once again, as far as the exterior materials, we're dealing with metal panel siding, wood panel siding, wood trim, asphalt shingle roof, poured concrete foundation, and masonry units. And once again, the proposed project amount would be 175,583, and the gross square foot would be 1,931 square feet. And this is just showing you how the section through the second floor would allow for a cathedral ceiling or a flat. And this is the 250, oops. This is the $250,000. What's going on here? I'll get temperamental now. This is excuse me. This is the 250,000 square foot. It's a contemporary colonial style residence. It's 3 bedrooms on the second floor, full bath, half bath. Ideal for a starter home, single parent, children, and a 2-parent family. The form, I have a gabled roof, and I utilize front porch as far as the second floor and first floor. Once again, bringing all the interaction, the activity onto the street. The second story one is more of a private area, but you could still come out. It's just the feeling of being able to sit out and observe people, watch, people watch more so. And the basic floor plan is 7-foot high basement ceiling, 600 square feet laundry area. The first floor is an open plan again. Social area being the living room, dining room, kitchen, half bath. Second floor would be the private area, 3 bedrooms and full bath. And once again, the site, we'd have the green buffer and the rear yard standard grass, garage optional. And the proposed project amount would be 250,455 square feet. And I'm sorry, dollars. I'm sorry, apologize. And as far as the square feet, yeah, it would be 1,931 square feet. And that's just another exterior shot. Once again, this would be metal panel, wood panel, and asphalt shingle roof with poured foundation and stairs. And this is the economic infill tiny home for 25,000. This one, it's a contemporary tiny home, 1 bedroom, bathroom. Exterior materials would be metal panel and wood and a concrete slab on grade. And as far as the situating them on the site, I wanted to put 2 of the units on the site. That way, as far as what Lester or August did mention was the fact that you could pull utilities in for one structure to service 2. So, and then also to allow access to vehicular access to the units for emergency vehicles and in case a person just happened to have a car. But basically, this is for a person getting on their feet. So, you know, it's cut and dry. That is mine. Sure.
Back up a little bit here. Hey, Jonathan Ricky, West of West. Basically, when we were first talking with Trudy and the team at the city, we kind of found the task to be like, given the kind of ambition of the project and the kind of a little bit unknown of the funding source, how it's going to be developed, we thought it was typical or important to like design a typical system that would work for like all the houses, and then the end user could kind of pick and choose from that system what they want. So the system for an affordable, scalable home in Cleveland, basically, we thought that kind of boiled down to 3 things. The affordable part being, you know, having a range of options and price points. The scalable part, basically something that different families and different size like end users can, it can work for all different size groups. And then how does it relate to Cleveland? Basically looking at, you know, the context of the city, the history, the culture, and the sort of architectural heritage, and trying to produce a kind of contemporary version of the existing context, or paying homage to that in some way. So basically, for the context, we, just to kind of say the way it like fell into the system, we kind of cut it down for time, but basically we looked around at a lot of the land bank, all the neighborhoods the land bank properties are in, and kind of came up with this architectural playbook of features, basically. So those were gable roof, chimney, covered porch, masonry base, bay windows, recessed windows, volumetric overhangs, and accent trims. So those things kind of show up in the designs in different ways. But basically the kind of like DNA of the design is this idea of like a core and then living areas surrounding them. So basically the service core of the house is the sort of black area on the screen. And that's like all the expensive stuff. So plumbing, electrical, all your things that cost a lot of money to build are kind of packed in there. And then we also thought, as we were going through it, it's actually important to have this other core, which is like the social core, which is on the exterior. But that is like the sort of porch and entry sequence of the home and like the way the house interfaces with the city. So those were 2 really important things. And then the sort of like cheap stuff, which is like bedrooms and living space. It's sort of just walls that kind of span in between the other parts, infill between those. So basically this system produced essentially like 4 versions that became 6. So from extra small, which is the tiny home, small, which is the $100,000 home, medium, which is the 175 target, and then large, which is the 250 target. And then there's basically for the medium and large, there's a kind of 1-story version and a 2-story version. That's all the different plan types. Then we also kind of like introduced this roof character element, which is like you can either do a gabled roof or a shed roof, just to kind of introduce variation. So that if you're building like, you know, let's say there's like a block that is mostly vacant lots. If you were to deploy the system on that block, you would end up with a sort of variable street frontage. So it doesn't look just like a kind of cookie cutter stamp down the street. The kind of system produces a pretty similar interior, a slightly different size, but at least for the living spaces, this is a very typical living room at the front of the house, just off of the like front porch and vestibule. That's kind of around the corner to the right, and then a very typical kitchen, which is just behind the living area. So the living area would be to the right, come into the kitchen, and there's this dine-in kitchen with like a sink looking to the backyard and a stove and fridge on the far wall. And then in the 2-story versions, the ceiling is open to above. We in developing the design, like getting pricing feedback was pretty critical. So we worked with a local builder, Knez Homes, to give us pricing feedback for each of the models. So basically, this is kind of where we landed on the cost. We couldn't get very close to the $25,000 price point, as you pointed out earlier. We got the 63, but everything else was coming in pretty good. So the small at 111, the medium, the 2-story medium was at 163, the 1-story medium was at 193. The target there was 175, and then the large was coming in. Both the 1-story and the 2-story were coming in right around 200,000, and the target there was 250. So we were doing a little better there. And then today we're just going to talk. About the small and the medium, just to kind of to shorten this a little bit. But the small is basically a 1-story house, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 700 square feet. This is kind of how it looks on the typical site. Pretty minimal footprint. And then if we zoom in on the plan, you can see there's that social core at the front porch and covered entry. Brings you into a living room, through the living room to the kitchen. All of these models, except for the tiny home, have a full basement. That's just the kind of pricing assumption. And then the kitchen exits out to a rear porch into the yard. And then also there's a little like corridor that kind of connects the bedroom and bathroom and the laundry off the kitchen. Pretty simple unit. We did try to kind of like push windows to the corners and stuff to give a feeling of sort of expanse when you're looking from the inside looking out, because it is small. This is a typical front elevation of the gable roof, the shed roof. Will come in a second. That's a kind of like rendering in context. And then that's the sort of shed roof version. Again, just a sort of like end user choice. The medium home, there's 2 versions of this one, a 1-story and a 2-story. That also sort of relates to ADA requirements based on who's developing it, which is a whole other thing to get into. But basically, there's 2 variations. This is the 1-story, has a little bit bigger footprint than the 2-story, just because both bedrooms are on this level. So you can see the plan is very similar, but the 2-story one of the bedrooms just moves upstairs. This is a kind of zoom in on the 1-story version, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Similar plan to the small unit. Enter through the living room into the kitchen, and then in this version, both bedrooms are accessed sort of on 2 little corridors off the kitchen, and there's a bathroom in the middle. And then you get a kind of, as a result, you get this kind of like covered back porch that could be an outdoor dining area. And in the, oops, I skipped one. In the 2-story version, one of those bedrooms moves upstairs. So your rear porch is kind of a corner porch. And then there's a set of stairs to the second floor that's stacked over the basement stairs. And you kind of come up in this, walk across this catwalk in this kind of double height space between the living room and kitchen. And then you get this kind of like primary suite upstairs, which has a bedroom, a bathroom, walk-in closet, and a potential like flex space, which could be used as an office. Sorry, skipping around a little bit. That's the 1-story elevation. The 2-story elevation simply just stretches up, and we add a window on the second floor. And then some renderings in context. That's the 1-story version. That's the 2-story version. And then the sort of shed roof counterpart, 1-story and 2-story. And then there are these other versions too. Again, six kind of like members of the family. And that's sort of how they look together. And I think there's, interest in playing with the exterior materiality and all that stuff, but I think that will come as we further develop. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I applaud you all for a couple things. First of all, getting diverse opinions and input, right? Because that's better outcome, in my professional opinion. I think I am also very intrigued with the fact that these typologies could address a lot of populations and a lot of situations. I mean, I know as seniors want to stay in their neighborhoods too, they can't maintain their homes and they tend to overstay their welcome in their structures. And so unfortunately they expire or they can't maintain them anymore. So I can see a concept here. Of course, when I see stuff like this, my creative juices started flowing. And I know the tiny house is a challenge, but I know you guys are trying to solve for X, but if this works its way out, I believe you could approach a small senior development with the cottage style homes on one site. Maybe it's 20, 30 units. They all share resources and utilities and, coming in, and you might be able to bring it in at that point. That's just a concept, because I'm also thinking about what happens when a lot of these houses go vacant. You have property, you also have an opportunity with the middle market to renovate the home. So I think if you take that whole sort of kit of parts, that toolbox, and you come up with all these typologies and approaches, I think working all together will help solve some social ills that we're experiencing throughout our communities and neighborhoods. Great job.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fluker. And I just want to say that's something, the cottage court style homes are something we've definitely been trying to explore further. We partnered with planning on the Lee Harvard Community Master Plan last year, and that's something that definitely surfaced to the top and something we're looking at some of the sites there. And we also have had the opportunity to partner with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District on some of their larger scale vacant land sites. And we think an opportunity like that may work really well on, say, a 2 or 3 acre site of vacant land where we have kind of this clean aggregated site to work with.
Another thing, Madam Chair, to you all, I'm glad you're looking at single family homes. As much as I understand why we have to do apartment buildings, that is not a dignified way to live. At some point in your life, you should, you do have to, but I think if we're trying to keep folks in community, I don't think, you can achieve density in different ways. So thank you.
So we'll go back to my question, and then after seeing it raised for me, I do think you should think about an unusual way to go forward. And so I don't know what I'm going to say is going to mean for you three, or how you could structure this. But I think a lot of amazing work and thinking and a variety of things that people could choose from between all three and between all models. I think the city ought to consider a partnership where you open source these out, and if people are coming in the land bank, they have an ability to go and run with these. Because the real issue is the soft costs and the whole host of other things that it's going to blow this is just construction costs. And the idea of like an open source strategy to allow individuals or people as well as others. And I don't know what that looks like. I know you guys, these are yours and you own them. But I would consider like a very different approach to access and dissemination and scale by doing something like that, where it is so affordable for people to, back to the days when you could mail order your plans. Remember those days from the suburbs where people could but I'm actually serious, because I think you'll get a better quality. I think there's enough ideas and, go to the next level, but enough ideas and variety and thinking here that we won't have like a homogeneous city and not everybody's going to take these, but people, anyway, so that it's just my thought of like, don't just go forward with now you're going to go deeper on the pricing but the true innovation now might actually be taking what you guys have done and thinking about what's the way to change how people are actually building things in the city, the traditional kind of model of and empowering individuals to go quickly, to have it very easy. So I don't know what that looks like, but it should be like, I can come in on a Monday. This is what going to quote me on this.
Oh, you talking about the building department now?
Yeah, I can come in on a Monday, pick a land bank lot, process an idea, get a permit by Friday and go. Like, I'm serious. Like,
Is there an option? Is there an option for like sweat equity for a person if they find something that they like would the city object to that?
Asking me. Like, to that point, like, warm show, like, that's how I built my house in the city. Just to the studs, and then I took it from there. Well, of course I'm an architect, but like, yes, like, awesome. It keeps the cost down, and like, but yeah, so I guess that to me is like the go forward strategy shouldn't just be now about the design. It should be about how do you really scale this?
No, in response, I think that's exactly the important part of what needs to happen now. So there's two things. Yes, that approach you've talked about is exactly what the director wants to see come to fruition.
Monday and Friday.
Yes, exactly. Part of this is also laying the groundwork with the planning staff, the work that they're doing. So if they say a single family house can go on this lot as of right, and therefore we can cut the administrative costs, that will be a savings there. But more importantly, what we want to do with this is pay for all the design work, pay for the construction documents. We've asked for construction pricing from all of them. Obviously, support from you guys would really give us a signal that we're going in the right direction, and that would make a worthwhile investment to move forward with the pricing they've given us. But what we want to do is really flip the whole approach that the city has had with housing on its head, at least from community development's perspective. We deal with grant funds, we deal with subsidizing gaps on projects. That means there is thousands of hours, manpower hours devoted to just getting a project to work on the pro forma, getting all the pieces in place so that construction is fully funded and get ready. What we want to get back to is more of a market-based speculative approach where the designs are paid for. We want to find a construction financing partner that will finance the construction, but these are ultimately for sale at very affordable prices, attainable for a Clevelander. And then we need grant funding really on the back end as a backstop for like if there are challenges on affordability for a household, or if there's a need to convert these to affordable rentals, then we can use the federal dollars to do that. But we've already have these units in production and there, and we're really dealing with the market challenges for grant funding as opposed to trying to get a project fully funded and to the starting line. So I think it would be more responsive to the needs of the community, like you said, to get the different type of topologies that we need. But yeah, we're talking with the Port Authority. They have a new executive director coming on. They have a huge financing arm that, and they're willing to work with the city if we bring them sort of projects of a significant scale. So we could say, we could do X number of these houses, finance them through the Port Authority, put them up for sale, and then after probably 10, what doesn't get sold after a year, then we will use our grant dollars to sort of make sure those have a exit strategy. So that's more the approach we want to get to, because over the next 10 years, we need to address, the city needs 21,000 housing units. It's not because of rapid population growth, but it's demographic changes. And more importantly, the condition of a significant number of housing units in the city of Cleveland are no longer competitive. And they're deteriorating to a point where they could become a demolition cost to the city and other negative aspects.
I guess I was saying too, but just like I guess what I was trying to say, to consider also this idea that when I think back to, I built my house 15 years ago in the city, and what a Herculean effort it was for somebody who could get financing to do it. Like it was like, blue sky, right? So it was hard. And I guess where I was going is there a path by which, in the land bank, these are at CD level. Someone comes in and gets a lot and pays an additional fee, and maybe there's a royalty to those for the plans. Shark Tank. And but where I'm going, and then traditional bank financing know that this is a product that can get built for that amount, because I'm convinced that one of the barriers to the middle market is that people just don't want to go through the brain damage on their own. But if you made this kind of like off the shelf, like ability to do it, they'll pay for the plans, and there's a kind of straightforward way to then go to a bank and get a reasonable loan while you're also doing the other thing to make the kind of large blocks and affordability. But I'm convinced there are a whole bunch of people who just don't know how to do it, who would just literally sign up for this, that, and the other and get through and go get their own financing. So let them do it.
I believe I'm going to get started. Oh my goodness. But anyway, no, this will be short. I experienced the same thing you did. I wanted to rehab my house, and this is true. And you guys probably already know this. You have to fix the ecosystem. And it's not just the financing, it's also appraisers who go into Black and brown communities. No, they appraised my house the same amount it cost me to build it 25 years ago because they didn't get their asses out of their cars and come in my house. Luckily, we had lots of equity in our house. That's a problem as well. So I understand, Lillian, but there's a lot of pieces and parts that you guys know. And I'm not preaching to you guys, but I had to say my piece because those barriers exist. And we need to overcome them. We have to figure out a process and a methodology to overcome all that. So to Lillian's point, so that it's a lot easier for someone to walk in and make that transaction. So.
Madam Chair, to the staff, I have a lot of thoughts. I'm trying to encapsulate where I want to go here. Before you came up, Director Ackers, the first thing I literally wrote down was the city's 10-year plan, because in a former life, I was part of that work a number of years ago, and then you immediately addressed it. So I'm grateful that the long vision of how does all of this fit in? I think I want to start with the who. We've talked a lot about the what and the cost, and what I haven't heard is who are we talking about here? Are we talking about residents that live in the city? Are we talking about residents that we're attracting to the city? Are we talking about residents that we're trying to retain, whether they're here for a short-term period, college, medical residencies, things of that nature? And Michael may remember this. I harped on this a lot at that time period early on when the city was first starting its 10-year plan. I think sometimes we get hyper focused on like the thing that we're trying to deliver without always kind of zooming out and thinking about who are we, like who's the end user here? Who are we speaking to? Because Cleveland is a mere, it's a mix of a lot of different people, long-standing residents, transplants like myself, right? And so I think each of these models in a former life, I think I wanted to be an architect or maybe in the future, I don't know. I'm intrigued. I look at my architect friend, they're like, don't do it. I'm intrigued by these models, but I think what I was struggling with throughout the presentation from each gentleman is who is this for? Because we have folks in the city that often feel othered because they have been here a long time and they have immediate needs for their existing home and feel like when new funding comes into the city, it's always about the new people. And it's like, hello, it's like, what about me? And I think the narrative is going to be really important here because I think what each of you developed is absolutely amazing. And I think it's also an educational opportunity for our community to understand the both and. And as we were going through each of the presentations, I think also thinking about kind of, I may not be able to get as granular as Chair Curry because I don't have that technical knowledge, but what I was thinking about when you were talking was wraparound supports. And so once we know who the who is, right, like what are the things that we're doing to build this long-term trajectory for wealth creation in our city, right? Because there may be a demographic of someone who sees these models and they're like, never. Not possible for me, not possible for my life ever. And that's a defeatist, I think, standpoint, right? And so if we're thinking about how are we building the capacity of our city as a whole, how do we get someone to understand the steps that they may need to take to get there? Because I do think it's achievable even for someone who may see those numbers, may feel intimidated, as Chair Curry said, like, oh, like I don't have this expertise. How are we bringing everyone along the way? Because I do think that is possible. And then, sorry, looking at my scratchy notes here. And then the other thing was just like, as you all are thinking through this plan, what is the data that's driving like location throughout the city? And obviously I know you have, where the land bank lots are, but just from like a prioritization standpoint, because again, going back to the who, if we understand who we're catering this to, then perhaps utilizing that data to help us understand, it's like a 30, 60, whatever year plan. And like, how do we kind of phase that out over time based upon where the lots are and sort of who we're trying to meet in this moment?
All really great points. I remember your participation on that and valued it.
That or indifferent. You can tell me offline.
No, you don't get the solutions without clearly identifying the problem. And I think your contribution to that has been vital. So the who is really, I think my answer is always, it's Cleveland has an uncompetitive housing stock generally across the board, except for maybe very luxury apartments downtown. There's just the average age of housing in the city of Cleveland is, I think it's almost, you're getting to like 100 years is the average age. There's a whole nother sort of work that needs to be done on how can you make rehab affordable in the city. It is not affordable today. Even when we try to put grants and try to, give something, to residents who desperately deserve it, there needs to be a whole nother design study with architects to say, okay, here are the traditional forms that we see throughout the city, select the ones that would have the most impact, and then figure out, okay, at its core, what could you sort of do to do the same approach here? Like, how do you get the components together? What do you focus on in order to make this rehab affordable as opposed to every single rehab being a custom job on some sense? So that's a whole nother, and that's probably a harder project than this one. So we started with the easier one first. And I think across the board, what you see, there's a need for housing for everyone in the city of Cleveland. It's hard to find housing that is high quality, safe, and meet your needs for the community. I have untold number of people who tell me they look and just can't find something, because when you want to invest, you're looking for the best that you can get for your money, unless you're going to do a full rehab. Most people don't have the resources or can't get the financing because appraisal issues just don't work out. I hear that banks have programs to address that, but they've yet to share any example of a success. So yeah, there's a whole ecosystem that needs to be addressed. I think the way Tree's team is working on sort of identifying where this would go. I just know that there have been neighborhoods that have been completely neglected. Desperately need market approach-driven housing that can be then used as real comps for other activity to occur. Because once you start having those comps in those neighborhoods, it should start to prime the pump in a way that addresses it. That's all hoping that you get appraisers that are working in good faith and not trying to turn around an appraisal with poor quality market information that we have in some of these neighborhoods. They need to do extra legwork in order to find the real values. So I think we are still at the very beginning. The 10-year housing plan sort of helped define the scale of the problem and really articulate we need solutions at a system scale. This project is focusing on the new construction side, the production side. So we, in the 10-year housing plan, we had production, preservation, and protection as the three P's that need to be addressed. The preservation aspect is really, we've invested a lot of money in some home rate repair as a way to get some short-term successes. But in terms of rehab, we need to start thinking about what are the systems approaches that are really going to move the needle and address those 43,000 units of housing that needs rehab in the city. You're not going to do that with the current system approach that we have today. And then the council is doing a really good job on the protection side, where they're investing in right to counsel, giving people a lawyer when they're facing eviction in housing court, making sure that we are doing what we can on the homelessness side, like the mayor's every neighbor, home for every neighbor program, to put those who are unsheltered directly into housing and giving them an opportunity to stabilize and the benefits that come from that. So these are big, long-term, I think, exciting efforts that we are doing. That wouldn't have happened without you guys giving your blessing on that 10-year housing plan. And your ideas are still really valued. And I think we truly treasure your partnership in this.
Thank you very much. Anything else before we wrap up? Anybody else? Thank you. Well, we see you again. What's the next step? Just figuring out what's next. And
we're going to build model suites.
We're going to continue to work with the Planning Commission. Adam Davenport has been on all of our regular calls, so we've been working lock and step with planning on this. And yes, I believe that we will be in front of you again soon.
Director's report.
So our Cleveland Moves team has they've have released a draft of recommendations for online comments this week, and it will be available online until February 17th. And so they'll be taking comments for both Systemic and Bike Network. And it can be found on our webpage at clevelandohio.gov/Cleveland-moves. The other announcement that I have is that we have this week we started our engagement training, which is being led by Third Space. And so this is something that is funded through U.S. Department of Transportation Thriving Communities program. And it'll help us as we begin to do some of our neighborhood projects, streetscape projects, as well as our citywide plan. Just really helping prepare our neighborhood planners to be ready to engage and be able to do it in a way that is meaningful and getting the feedback that we need. And lastly, I wanted to introduce Carrie Ann, who is a Cleveland State student in urban planning, and she is, I'm working with her in the mentorship program, so that's my mentee, and so she just came to observe the city planning process. So.
All right, I think we're done. Meeting adjourned. See you in